Why you are weak. The Buddha's two powers. Westerners secretly lack. Endurance and contentment are virtues that Westerners are notoriously bad about and lacking in. The Ajahns in Thailand noticed, when they had Western students, that these were their weak points. Westerners had trouble enduring hardships, enduring restrictions. They were always finding something wrong with the situation and making themselves thoroughly miserable. So these are two virtues that we have to work on. And a large part of developing endurance and contentment lies in learning how to talk to yourself. As you know, the Buddha's analysis is that through ignorance, we fabricate bodily, verbal, and mental fabrications in ways that cause suffering. So we have to bring some knowledge to the process so that we can turn these fabrications into the path to the end of suffering. And the knowledge here is the knowledge of a skill. Knowing how to breathe, knowing how to talk to ourselves, knowing what perceptions to hold in mind. One of the most harmful mental fabrications to focus on is how you're suffering under some condition that other people are not suffering under, and thinking that it's not right. But then again, you don't know other people's states of mind. They may be free in some ways that you're not free, but suffering under other burdens that you don't know. So that kind of comparing mind isn't helpful. One of Ajahn Fuang's students once complained to him that she had a miserable life. And he said to her, "Your miserable life would be 20 times good for a lot of other people. So learn to look at the good side of the situation. And there is a good side. Focus on that. This works both for contentment and for endurance. In terms of endurance, if you're constantly focusing on what's difficult, what's painful, where you're weak, it just aggravates the situation. Look for your strengths. Look for the things that do give you support. I found this very helpful when I was living alone on the mountain there in Thailand. The situation sounds like it should have been ideal. I had all this time for myself. But when I first got there, after a couple days, I felt trapped. There was nowhere else I could go. And I found that looking around for helpful things I could do for other people gave me a sense of accomplishing something within the restrictions of being there. So look around. See what kinds of small favors you can do for other people, or simply straighten things out. If you find that something is a mess, well, you can straighten it out. Most of us divide our times between the things we have to do and the things we want to do. When we're done with the things we have to do, we think, well, what do I want to do now? But it's good to ask yourself instead, do I have a little extra energy to do something else? Not just for satisfying my wants, but as an act of kindness. And then learn how to look at the voices in your mind. It was during that period on the mountain that I began to realize that my mind was like a committee. Lots of different opinions, some of which I could trace to my mother, to my father, different lessons I had picked up at school, picked up from the culture at large. Being in a place far away from my culture, far away from my family and friends, allowed me to identify who I was carrying around inside. I could ask myself, what do those people know? What did they know when they said that? Or they passed on that value, passed on that idea? Have I ever really tested it? Or did I just pick it up? And seeing the voices, not necessarily as my voice talking to me inside, but just as different voices inside, allowed me to step back and choose what kind of conversation I wanted to have with myself. That insight makes it a lot easier to put up with the times when the mind is saying all kinds of crazy things, because this is what it comes down to. Ajahn Lee points out that of those three kinds of fabrication, verbal fabrication is the real culprit. We suffer because of the way we talk to ourselves, and we can change the way we talk to ourselves. We have our old habits. We have the old conversations we've been through many, many times, and we know that they don't put an end to suffering. And yet, we engage in them again and again anyhow, because we don't see anything better, or don't think that we're capable of anything better. Or we say to ourselves, this is the way I am, this is the way I think, this is the way it's got to be. But if you couldn't change the way you talk to yourself, then the Buddha wouldn't have taught. It's because we can change our ways that the Buddha taught the Dhamma. So look into that verbal fabrication. Technically, it's defined as directed thought and evaluation, but it basically comes down to the chatter going on in the mind. When you invest that chatter with your identity, it makes it hard to step back from it. So instead, you can look at it as the committee of the mind, or the corporation of the mind, or try Ajahn Lee's image. There are all those worms inside your body, the germs inside your blood vessels. As those germs go through the blood vessels in the brain, they may leave a few ideas behind. Or who knows about the spirits of people and animals that you've mistreated in the past. They may be hovering around looking for a chance to slip something disruptive into your mind when you're not noticing. In other words, figure out some way of seeing the voices as other. That's what the Buddha said lies at the essence of discernment. Seeing things as separate. You don't have to identify with them. You can choose your identity. You can choose the voices in the mind that you're going to side with. So take advantage of that fact. That will make all the difference between whether you're discontent or content with where you are. Realize that where you are right now is good enough to practice. That's what contentment is for. Ask yourself, can you breathe? Can you focus on your breath? Do the circumstances around you allow for that? If they allow for that, then the problem is inside. So you turn and look inside. Because remember what the limits of contentment are. You content yourself with outside circumstances that are good enough to practice. So you can focus on being discontent with the level of skill in your mind. You can focus on the work that really needs to be done. The same with endurance. If you tell yourself, I must have the strength to do this, you find that you do have it. If you tell yourself, I don't have the strength, I can't stand it, things are going to break down. So learn to build up some resilience. Learn to build up some confidence that the resources are there, the potentials are there so that you can practice. You do have the strength. You can put up with difficult situations. You can put up with restrictions outside. You've got what it takes. Listen to the voice that says that inside. And then focus on the work that really needs to be done. If the end of suffering involves straightening out the world, there would be no end to the problem. But what it really involves is straightening out your inner conversation. So focus there and you've got a lot of the problem solved. Noble Contentment, Noble Discontent. There's a passage where the Buddha extols contentment as one of the basic values of the Dhamma practice. But then there's another one where he says it was because he didn't allow himself to stay content with his skillful qualities that he was able to attain awakening. This means we have to figure out, where does contentment apply and where does it not? It applies basically to your physical surroundings, the things you have and use. When the Buddha talks about being content with whatever clothing you have, whatever food you have, whatever shelter you have, these are some of the customs of the noble ones. Being content doesn't mean you don't take care of these things or improve them. There are lots of instructions about how, when you get a hole in your robes, you have to mend it. When your shelter is in danger, when the roof is leaking and termites are invading, you have to protect it. So this isn't a lazy kind of contentment. You accept what you've got, but then you do your best to make the most of it. You look after it well. It's that element of wanting to make the most of what you've got. That's where the discontent comes in. In other words, you figure, is there something more I can do with what I've got? I'll try. You accept where you are, but you also accept the fact that where you are has some potential for growing. That's the fourth of the customs of the Noble Ones. You take joy in developing, and you take joy in abandoning. That applies directly to the mind. You take joy in developing good qualities and abandoning unskillful qualities. Whatever helps you in that direction is part of the practice too. So you don't just sit here with whatever comes up, allowing yourself to be assailed by whatever. If there's something you can do to direct the mind in a skillful direction to get it on the path, that's what you do. For instance, with the breath. When the breath is not going well, when it feels uncomfortable, laborious, strained, you watch it for a while, but not so that you just sit with it. You watch it so that you can try to figure it out and then improve it. What is it about the breath that's uncomfortable? Why is it uncomfortable? Is it the way I'm holding my body? Is it the way I'm focused on the breath? Some people, when they decide to concentrate on the breath, clamp down on all the energy in the body, and of course, that's going to be uncomfortable. You have to think about opening things up, letting the energy come in from all directions and extend out in all directions. You're not here to clamp down or to grab hold of the breath. You're just to touch the breath and maintain contact with the breath. Think of it that way. This is one of the areas where you're encouraged to develop as much as you can, the conditions for allowing the mind to settle down so that it does have a good, solid place to stay. Then you apply the same principles to the mind. What in the mind can you change? What can you not change yet? Any unskillful qualities that come up in the mind, you don't simply accept the fact, oh yeah, there's a lot of greed, there's a lot of aversion, there's a lot of lust, there's a lot of fear, jealousy, whatever. You don't deny the fact that they're there, but you don't just stay there either. You accept is as your starting point. You also accept the fact that you can develop the mind. You can change the mind. This is what the Buddha's teachings on karma are all about. We tend to miss this because we misunderstand karma. We think it's all about what you did in the past, but for the Buddha, the important karma is what you're doing right now. What you do with the raw material of the present moment, how you shape it. Given that you're shaping it all the time, you might as well shape it in a good direction. This is what it means to be discontented with skillful qualities. Not that you're always rushing to get to the next step, but realizing there's area for the mind to develop. You take what you've got and you make the most of it. That's where the contentment comes in. I see these are all the raw materials I've got. Well, let's see what I can make with them. It's like all those software designers who come from India. They say that back in the past decades, the computers in India were really low-powered. To develop good software, the designers were forced to figure out the most efficient way of writing code. As a result, they became really expert. They took the limitations and used them to their advantage. In the same way, if you find you've got limitations in your practice, see what you can do to use them to your advantage. What lessons you can learn from them. How you make the most of what you've got. You accept what you've got, but you also accept that it has growth potential, and you want it to go in the right direction. After all, this is a path we're on. If the path didn't go anywhere, the Buddha would have called it the Noble Eightfold Spot. But it's a path. Paths have starting points and they have ending points. Your starting point is where you are right now. and you're headed in a direction. You want to be headed to freedom. That's what the substance, what the essence of the teaching is all about. We're going someplace. You start where you are, look at what you've got, and then you figure out, how can I make the most of this? As with Ajahn Lee and Method 2. He had gone deep into the forest for a rains retreat. He'd walked 3 days into the place where he planned to spend the rains. Soon after he got there, he had a heart attack. There was no medicine. The food available was actually bad for his heart. It was mainly hill tribes' food, and they ate a lot of bamboo shoots. And one of the things I learned in Thailand is that if you have heart disease, stay away from bamboo shoots. But that was all he had, so what was he going to do? He had his breath, so he worked with that, figuring out how to breathe in a way that would give strength back to his body, mend his heart, and mend all the damage that had been done by the heart attack. At the end of the rains retreat, he was able to walk out, so he faced the fact that he had a lot of limitations, but he made the most of what offered the most potential for growth. That's an attitude you have to take toward everything in life. Whether it's school, your work, or whatever you do, you have to accept what limitations you have, and then recognize where your potential strengths are. What has the most growth potential, given the situation you're in right now, and you work on that. You don't just sit there and say, well, I'll just be content with the way things are. That's like a farmer lying out in his field, saying, I'm content with the fact that my field is growing weeds. If that's the farmer's attitude, he doesn't get to eat, his family doesn't get to eat, and nobody else gets the food. Everybody dies. So contentment means accepting where you are, but for the purpose of the practice, you have to be motivated by a certain discontent. You realize that there is suffering, but you also realize there's something you can do about it. You gather together all the strengths you have and you work on those. You find that as you develop those strengths, others come along. There will, of course, be obstacles in the path, but you don't want them to discourage you. There was a story I read one time of a man studying with a Zen teacher in the Midwest. He had decided he wanted to come out to Hollywood and try his luck. I've forgotten whether he was a screenwriter or what. So he went to say goodbye to his teacher, and his teacher said, "What if you go out there and they knock you down?" The guy said, "I guess I'll just have to accept that." And he hadn't even finished the sentence when the teacher said, "No, if they knock you down, you get back up again. They knock you down a second time, you get up a second time. You don't give up. If you realize something's really good, really worthwhile, you do whatever you can to attain it. That's the discontent that led to the Buddha's awakening. You don't rest where you are. If you have a good understanding of how to mingle contentment and discontent in the practice, you'll have a sure footing and you'll go far.